What's good folks, it's KnightmareFrame here with a new Warframe video, coming at you with the 5 most overpowered Warframes in the game. Now these frames are at this level because of their diverse and over-the-top strong kits, with all amazing abilities that synergize with one another. Yes, there are other frames that are tanky or super fast, but these frames just make the game ridiculously effortless and at the same time make you feel like a god. This might be a bad and a good thing for some players. All the frames that you will see here are good with any type of weapon, and they're not held back by being specifically good at certain game modes, as they can be taken anywhere. Even though this is a top 5 video, I will provide my builds for the Warframes that are showcased. Starting off at number 5, everyone's favorite trap. Okay, all jokes aside, Nesha is a beast, having that juicy 90% damage reduction that also deals damage over time with the slash procs, and grants you full immunity to status effects. Yes, you're immune to knockdowns and staggers, which can be super useful if you're building for a melee setup. That will have you opt out from using handspring or prime sure-footed. Also having the ability to increase your movement speed while cleansing allies of status effects, and setting enemies on fire, as heat procs now are super strong, reducing enemies' armor by 50%. You're not stripping their armor, but reducing their overall armor value by 50%. You have an ability to teleport you short distances and having the enemies take more damage from all sources. Nesha is also great at crowd controlling large groups of enemies and have them completely incapacitated. My Nesha is built for high level content, so your builds may vary from mine. The aura is corrosive projection for the 30% armor strip, but you can run whatever you like. Vigilante pursuit for the enemy radar. If you go into long runs, your sentinel or companion will die off eventually, so it's good to have a consistent enemy radar. 210% power strength to increase all my abilities as they all scale from ability strength. The damage to bonus armor conversion, the damage vulnerability from your chakram, the heat and slash damage over time, along with the divine spear's damage all scale from power. Reaping chakram augment to further increase the damage done to enemies with your chakram, and granting me health orbs from the enemies who die of being affected by the chakram. Great way to support yourself and allies. Primed continuity for the duration, streamlined for the efficiency, hunter adrenaline to convert health damage taken to energy. Even though the damage reduction works on shields, Nesha does not have a good shield pool to begin with, so this setup works. Or you can replace it with primed flow. And finally, adaptation for the added defenses. Moving on to number 4, Gaus, the speedster that loves smashing into walls, as he keeps you on your toes and always on the move. All of his abilities synergize so well with one another, a frame that needs you to use all of his abilities, building up momentum to increase your damage output, great crowd control that strips enemy armor if it doesn't kill them first, ability to deal consistent damage over time while gaining increased attack speed, fire rate, reload speed, and holster speed. And when maxed out on his red line, he buffs all of his other abilities to deal even more damage and even gain 100% damage reduction. He also gets energy regen when taking damage, which allows you to forego mods like Rage or Hunter Adrenaline, an ability to increase his melee damage while giving him damage reduction, and also synergize with his first ability to proc slash onto enemies he collides with. With all these status effects, it boosts condition overload's damage output. My build is aimed for both normal missions and high level content. The aura can be whatever you want, from sprint boost to enemy radar. Rush for the 30% sprint speed, duration at 207%, giving me 62 seconds on my red line, and kinetic plating. I don't want to use narrow-minded as that will reduce the range on my third ability. Adaptation is there for the added defenses when you're building up your red line. Rolling guard to remove lingering status effects like toxin, and useful when you initiate red line. Streamline and flow for the efficiency and energy pool. Vitality for the extra health, as at higher levels, toxin procs can be a problem, but you can replace vitality with quick thinking. It's all down to your playstyle. And number 3, we got Octavia. She has a super strong kit, yet she is super squishy. But you need to rely on a few things to keep yourself alive, and one of them is to remain invisible, which can be irritating for some players as you would have to spam crouch. She has insane amounts of scaling damage, crowd control, and an array of buffs that can be shared with allies. A very interactive frame in terms of design and playstyle, but she does lack the ability to deal with armor, so that's where your utility weapons come into play. With one ability, she can have 5 buffs and 4 that can be shared with allies, from increased multi-shot movement speed, melee damage, and invisibility. But you need to perform a few specific actions to gain these buffs, and the ability to turn the area into a dance floor, and any noise made within this dance floor increases weapon damage, and her first ability's damage output, along with range. Even though she's super squishy, you can mod her to be a tank, but that is a build we shall discuss later in a full Octavia video. And this is my go-to Octavia build for pretty much any mission. In the aura you can run whatever you want, but I prefer the enemy radar, as I like to take Octavia into endurance runs, mod her for a decent amount of power and duration to have her abilities active for a longer period, to scale up and deal as much damage as possible, and also to provide me with a good source of weapon damage. The build has 3 corrupted mods to build up on strength, range, and duration, streamline and flow for the energy pool, and efficiency, as blind rage does hurt the efficiency. Her 4th ability does increase the range of her first, so with 169% range, you're going to cover a massive area. Finally, rolling guard for the 3 seconds of invulnerability after a dodge roll, and to remove any sort of status effects. But then again, you can replace that with whatever you want. At number 2, it's the Plague Queen herself, Saren. With one ability, she dishes out amazing scaling damage that can also strip an entire map of their armor, spreading and infecting even more targets. An insatiable plague that won't stop till everything is dead. Well versed in all forms of weaponry and a mastery over toxins, nuking the map as she stuns and reduces enemies' health with her miasma. The ability to completely cleanse herself from any and all status effects. Useful set of augments that allow a ton of variety in builds, and great weapon synergies combined with her kit that can absolutely annihilate even the toughest and strongest of foes. I have several Saren setups, but I will leave a link to all the other different builds that I have for her. But for this, I will give you some juicy builds. I have an aura forma allowing me to use any aura without any penalties. The first build is pretty much for anything. The aura is 1000% not going to be corrosive projection because it will be redundant to run that aura when she already strips so much armor. My range is at 248%, that gives me 39.6 meters on my spores, 49.5 meters on miasma, and 25 meters on my molt explosion and diversion radius. Power strength would have been higher if it wasn't for overextended. With 150%, I have 74% status chance on my spores, which will still rapidly strip armor. And for the augments, I'll be using Venom Dose to buff myself and allies' weapons with the corrosive elements. Prime Flow for a good chunk of energy. You can however replace it with Streamline, but for a different and beefier setup that uses more power strength to get that 100% status chance on spores, I replaced Overextended and Flow for adaptation and Augur Reach. With 190% range, I have 34.4 meters on my spores, 38 meters on miasma, and 19 meters on my molt. And here I'll be using Regenerative Molt for the healing. You can however replace some mods to change it to a melee setup, replacing Transient Fortitude and Primed Continuity for Handspring and Hunter Adrenaline, and change the augment to Contagion Cloud for the Toxin Clouds to increase your damage output. And in the aura, you can use Swift Momentum for the 6 seconds of combo duration and 30% heavy attack wind-up speed. And here we are at number 1, the Beast, the Undying, the most deadliest tank, Revenant. With one ability, he can crowd control enemies and reflect damage back to the attackers while also granting himself status immunity, taking on any enemy with ease. Enemies affected by his first ability are turned into thralls, basically slaves that fight for you, and those thralls can spread the affliction to more enemies, making you have a small army. Enemies stunned by your Mesmer skin can be turned into thralls at no energy cost, and thralls can be easily one-shotted by your third ability, Reave, and reaving through enthralled enemies refreshes the charges on your second ability. This is synergy at its best. This of course requires a decent and an appropriate build. Thralls that are dead leave behind a small geyser that deals damage over time to nearby enemies. Reave also replenishes your health and shields, and you're also invulnerable during this state. You're literally the hardest frame to kill. His fourth ability isn't the best for high level content, but it's decent for normal to mid-tier levels. It changes its damage type to the enemy's weaknesses. Taking a look at the build, I have growing power in the aura to grant me 25% additional power strength when proccing a status effect. Power strength and duration is key for this build. Strength is at 323% with transient fortitude, blind rage, umbral intensify along with growing power, which gives me a total of 19 mesmer skin charges. Duration is at 128%. This gives me 38.25 seconds on enthrall, 6.38 seconds stun on mesmer skin, and a travel time of 1.28 seconds on Reeve, as the travel distance scales off duration. Flow and streamline for the efficiency and energy pool. Revenant has one of the worst energy pools, so he needs it. Natural talent for the 50% casting speed. This is down to personal playstyle. He just feels very sluggish without this mod. And finally, rolling guard. Useful when you want to recast your mesmer skin, because when you recast the ability, it is briefly deactivated, so you have a small window of vulnerability, which can get you killed. So rolling guard makes you invulnerable to all damage for 3 seconds so you can safely cast your mesmer skin. These are the 5 most overpowered Warframes. If you think there are others that beat these here, do leave it in the comments section, cause the word overpowered can mean differently to certain players. So I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe. For more Warframe content, streams, and so much more, do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace.